Year after year, Marvel Studios continues to greenlight and of course cancel various projects. So today we are here to look at every Marvel Studios project that is currently in development from 2024 to 2035-ish, let's say. And this will include all the other projects that are in development for Marvel. That includes Sony, for example, because those in a way are still a part of the big multiverse as we now know. So let's get to it. So of course, since we are in 2024, we gotta mention the first project that released. This of course being Marvel's Echo. Echo of course sees the character of Maya Lopez and a brand new introduction of Marvel's Spotlight, which is the R-rated, more violent, more street side of things that's not necessary to understand the bigger concepts and ideas in the sagas. Echo, of course, brought back the character of Daredevil and set up what is to come in the upcoming Daredevil Born Again. But coming at us after that, this spring, is the follow-up to X-Men the Animated Series, which is Marvel Studios' first production on X-Men, X-Men 97. Taking place a handful of years after the 92 series. It is a brand new take on the X-Men, seeing them led by Magneto, and it looks like the series will be a little bit more serialized than most people were expecting, with multiple follow-up seasons and follow-ups to what we saw in the original. The series is expected to be huge in terms of moving merchandise and just making people aware that the X-Men are back under Marvel and Disney. Action figures have already been finding success in sales, so there's a lot riding on this just to see how Marvel and Disney will handle this brand going forward. And speaking of going forward, let's talk about Marvel Studios' continued X-Men push with Deadpool 3, which of course is coming at us this summer. This is the sole Marvel Studios film release for this year. And the film, of course, is not just bringing Deadpool into the MCU, he will be joined by a huge amount of supporting cast characters we've seen in previous films, and this time also joined by Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. The film will throw Deadpool up against the TVA and some sort of oncoming incursion that's going to spell disaster for the future of the Fox-Men universe. How, why, and if this connects to the ending of the Marvels and where Monica is still remains to be seen as of the making of this video, but hype is high for the third Deadpool film. And when talking about high on hype, let's talk about Madam Web. You guys know we gotta cover the Sony movies as well because in a way they now matter. Now Madam Web is coming out in February, so it's ahead of Deadpool and X-Men, but I just placed it here because it's in close proximity to the other project we're gonna talk about, because Sony's dominating the summer. So Madam Web is obviously connecting to the bigger web of Spider-Man as part of the ongoing Multiverse Sony attempt to build out their continued shared universe. This film is introducing us to Ezekiel Sims, who of course is out there trying to eat spider totems and defeat them, and he has to come face to face with Madam Web and various other female spiders from across the multiverse. The film is rumored to have a deep connection to Sam Raimi's and Andrew Garfield's films somehow. We don't know how, I guess we'll find out soon enough. And the character of Madam Web is rumored to return somewhere down the road connected to MCU's Spider-Man, so we shall see. And speaking of connecting to MCU Spider-Man, who's excited for Kraven's last hunt as Kraven's first hunt / origin story? Or at least that's what Sony has said, but we still don't understand what they're doing. Whatever they're doing, we're getting Kraven the Hunter this summer. The film, of course, suffered almost a year-long delay and is rumored to be going through some reshoots, but again, we don't really know what this film is attempting to do. We've heard rumors that, like Madam Web, in a way it's connected to one of the Spider-Man universes. There has been rumors that Andrew Garfield is back and will be established as the Spider-Man at the end of this, but also earlier leaks of the film suggested that the film ends with the reveal that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is accused of murder, thus placing it in the MCU. Who knows? I guess we shall find out this summer when the film hits. And speaking of hitting, Spider-Man, formerly known as Freshman Year, now known as Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, is coming at us, by all accounts, by this fall. We already saw that toy production seems to be kicking into gear to deliver then, and this show was already renewed for a second season. And of course, it is a multiverse tale telling us a story about what if instead of when he's recruited by Tony Stark in his apartment, he ends up running into Norman Osborn. The ripples of the multiverse are felt here as Norman Osborn is now going to be in the Iron Man position, and they're retelling the MCU through this show. We already know characters like Daredevil, Doctor Strange, and various members of the Sinister Six will be in this. So essentially, we're getting what would the MCU have done if they had free reigns of all of these characters. It's just animated form. Going off of animation back to live action, this fall we also have the upcoming Agatha Darkhold Diaries, Agatha House of Harkness, Agatha Coven of Chaos. We don't know what the name is. They've changed it internally 4 times, so we'll see what it ends up landing with. But of course, this is the next chapter in the occult side of Marvel, and it's going to deal with the coven that's been assembled by Agatha trying to bring back the Scarlet Witch. This show is supposed to include characters like the Grim Reaper, possibly even Mephisto, and connect in a big way to what's coming down the road. This fall, we also have the 3rd entry in the Venom franchise. Very little is known about this, but a couple of teases are hints, at least people believe that, of what's to come, such as Tom Hardy standing next to a painting of a werewolf, suggesting that maybe it's Andrew Garfield, aka the werewolf, who he claims he wasn't, and that he had nothing to do with a return to Spider-Man. There's also been some suggestive things that have been said, some teases out there, and of course this is meant to be the last film in the Venom trilogy as it stands right now. So rumors for a while have suggested Sony's going to tie everything up here, and we're going to have a crystal clear picture of what their idea is for their universe. Whether this is true or not, who knows? I guess we're going to find out by the end of the year. But in this film, we definitely know it's going to be Venom facing Toxin. And since Marvel Studios' very own Baron Mordo also joined the project, there are some rumors he could be playing Spider-Man / Sony's version of the Sorcerer Supreme, but that is just a rumor for now, so we'll see what happens. Following that, in February of next year, we got Captain America Brave New World. This, of course, is the 4th Captain America film, picking up after the events of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We know that this film is going to be jam-packed with all sorts of hints towards what is coming in the MCU. We of course know that Sam Wilson Captain America will be joined by the Falcon Joaquin Torres, who ended up picking up his wings to go and repair them. We also know that the Serpent Society is in this film, along with the return of the Incredible Hulk's leader, who of course is experimenting on super soldiers. But also, we do have President Thunderbolt Ross, and we do know that he will in fact be turning into the Red Hulk. So this film is stuffed to the brim with Hulk characters and all sorts of Captain America super soldier connections. So we'll see exactly how this film plays out, but right now there's a lot of anticipation to see just how Marvel handles the next entry for Captain America, but also a film that's very much focused on the Hulks. As it was previously scheduled though, but who knows what the current status is, Daredevil Born Again is currently going through a massive amount of rewrites and then back for extensive reshoots as the series got rebooted from the ground up creatively, and they're going to keep what they have but add in a lot more action and try to match it up to what people expect from Daredevil. More like the Netflix series seems to be the goal. The series was scheduled to premiere in the early part of 2023, and then early parts of 2024 now, but some rumors suggest it could be later, all the way maybe into 2025. Whatever happens, we'll talk about it in the future, but obviously there's a lot riding on this project, and it's not just Daredevil that's returning. Of course, Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, is back in this, running for mayor. It's supposed to tie directly into Spider-Man 4 by all accounts, but also it's going to feature the return of the Punisher, and it's the Punisher being handled by Disney. Which brings us to the next show that's rumored. This being The Punisher, which has been rumored to go into development for quite some time, and rumors suggested that Marvel Studios would make a new imprint just for The Punisher. Now we know that multiple series and films will be going under Marvel's spotlight, and now they got a legit way that they can tell Punisher stories. We heard previously that John Bernthal would come back if the story was dark enough and it had some meaning to it, and he refused to join up until those demands were met. Apparently they were met and he was happy enough. Rumors suggest that Frank Castle will be in this, but also possibly joining the lineup of the Thunderbolts, and this is a way to connect everything. Now, previously, Daredevil Born Again was supposed to overlap with Thunderbolts, but delays have changed all sorts of, schedules in terms of release. But now, if Daredevil does release in 2025, it will in fact overlap with Thunderbolts, so maybe there is a chance for Frank to be in both still. Along with the rumors that Bullseye will be back in Daredevil Born Again and possibly also appearing in Thunderbolts, so this might all actually tie together. And speaking of tying things together, it's going to be interesting to see just how Marvel Studios ties the Fantastic Four into the MCU. It was the first project announced outside of Deadpool 3 that Marvel Studios was actively working on. It's been years, multiple writers, multiple directors, but it's finally happening. With production set to start this year, Marvel Studios is affording the director and the post-production teams close to 2 years of development on this. There's a lot riding on it. The Fantastic Four are meant to be an anchor and sort of a wave of new characters and a whole future ahead of them, so a lot of eyes are on this. With rumors that there could be a Silver Surfer in this, possibly even a female Silver Surfer, Galactus, and even Doctor Doom, things are looking rather stacked for Marvel Studios when it comes to Fantastic Four, if even half of this is true. So let's hope that we can finally get the first great Fantastic Four film, and let's hope that it delivers everything we fans want. And speaking of what the fans want, there's some characters in the Thunderbolts we want to see back. There's others that we don't want to see back, and there's others we want to be on the list. Whatever the case is, Marvel's Thunderbolts is set to be an important film. Not only is it going to be directly dealing with the fallout of the Eternals and the Celestials sticking halfway out of the water, allegedly he is harboring adamantium, which of course leads to Wolverine and Project X. This film is set to take a huge risk in terms of what they're doing, how they're going to position this as sort of their Suicide Squad, bringing in other characters, possibly TV characters like Punisher, and there's even been rumors that Ghost Rider will be showing up in this to set up his next project/appearance. And speaking of that, we were supposed to be already multiple seasons deep into Ghost Rider, but unfortunately was canceled back in 2019, right before production. There's been rumblings about Ghost Rider starting and then stopping, and just having a hard time getting off the ground. With recent shifts in regards to what Disney's doing with multiple characters and projects and how they can't spend insane amounts of money on TV projects, it's now rumored that Ghost Rider is either going to be a limited series, a smaller spotlight film, and or possibly on the level of Blade, where they're going to go hard R and try to focus on character and brutality instead of high-octane special effects, over-the-top lasers in the sky and all that. Which honestly sounds perfect. Ghost Rider is rumored to come out at some point in 2025, which is why I have it here, somewhere probably close to the Thunderbolts if the Ghost Rider rumors are in fact true that he could be a member of the team. Although there are 2 teams he can be involved with, so let's talk about a member of the other team, who of course is Blade. The long-awaited Blade reboot is, as of right now, scheduled for November of 2025. Coming in way later than most of us expected. But the film is expected to be a hard R spotlight banner film that's not going to hold anything back, and that they really are striving to tell the best possible Blade story that they can. Rumors have suggested that we're going to get an amalgam version of Lilith, the mother of demons, and a combination of another character from Marvel Comics. Blade's daughter would also be in this, along with hints towards the Night Stalkers, and of course bringing forth the threat that is Dracula, who is going to be fighting a team of more of the occult side of Marvel, assembling to, fight him, Mephisto, and possibly others. The team I'm talking about is of course the Midnight Suns. Well, according to some reports, we could be getting a taste of the Suns as early as 2025, but probably a bit later. I'm placing it here just because as part of the conversation, it fits into what we're talking about right now. And honestly, I do see the Midnight Suns happening. I just think it's going to take a lot longer to get there than 2025. Speaking of 2025, Ironheart was shot in 2022. It's not hitting till fall of 2025 at the earliest. Not much is known, but the little we do know is of course that Riri is back in full force and she is building a new suit of armor to fight none other than, this is weird, Marvel's character The Hood, who is here doing the bidding of Mephisto, who unfortunately Marvel Studios did not want leaking that he was in this, along with the fact that solo actor Alden Ehrenreich is in this playing Obadiah Stane's son. So clearly the Iron Man legacy will be explored in the series. And speaking of Iron Man's legacy, the long in development War Machine film, which started development after Iron Man 2, is finally happening as Armor Wars, and it will see James Rhodes as he's trying to recover stolen Stark tech that's being used to make, well, battle suits, Iron Man suits falling into the hands of the bad guys. It's rumored to bring back Justin Hammer from Iron Man 2, and also rumored to connect directly to Ironheart by bringing back Obadiah's son. Once again, there seems to be a lot going on here with the fallout of Iron Man and Iron Man's legacy, and this film is set to be a lot more of what people expect a normal Iron Man film to be, instead of let's try to connect it to the bigger multiverse picture and everything that's going on, which I think will please many people. Right now, we just wrapped up most of what's coming out, rumored to be at least coming out by the end of 2025, but there's still some Sony projects we gotta talk about for a bit, so let's get into that. So the first one is of course the co-joined production of the next Spider-Man film, the fourth entry in the MCU starring Tom Holland. We know that they were working on the script prior to the shutdown of the writers and the actors in early 2023. We currently don't know much about the next entry outside the fact that it looks like it's going to be way more focused on the friendly neighborhood and street level side of Spider-Man and highlighting that. It's supposed to pick up the pieces in the story left over in Daredevil Born Again, with Kingpin assembling a task force to get rid of vigilantes and try to expose who they are and clean up New York. The film is rumored to include villains like Scorpion, possibly the return of Vulture, and even in some way maybe connect to Spider-Man's bigger multiverse that Sony is building. The film is rumored to come out anytime between 2025 and 2026. We don't really know when or where, but it makes sense if you look at how Sony is gonna have a rather empty big gap if they don't fill it with something Spider-Man related. And speaking of something Spider-Man related, The Amazing Spider-Man 3. There's been rumors that Sony and Andrew Garfield are actively working together and talking, which we know is a fact, at least the last part. So the rumors about The Amazing Spider-Man appearing in Venom 3 and setting up possibly The Amazing Spider-Man vs. Venom, or just The Amazing Spider-Man 3 where he fights and or teams up with Venom against the Sinister Six that Sony's building in their universe. This might just be what Sony does and how they're going to handle the Spider-Man license, aka Marvel, you keep your Spider-Man with Tom Holland and do whatever you will with him, help us produce those films. On the side, we're going to be producing our other Spider-Man films that connect to our stuff. Obviously, everybody agrees Andrew Garfield got the short end of the stick with Sony's political games and all the BS, so this honestly makes a whole lot of sense to me, and this would honestly be a hit, I feel, for them if they produced it with a lot of love. So let's hope it's true. And speaking of Spider-Man, we're not done yet, as the third entry in this Spider-Verse is coming at us. Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse is coming out at some point in the future. Again, as of the making of this video, specifically this recording, it's early January, so nothing has been announced. When this film comes out, it's rumored to include all three live-action Spider-Man, connect to every single live-action Spider-Man film that Sony's doing. This includes Madam Web, Kraven, and everything else that they're setting up for development. Now, there's still a lot of questions in regards to what they're going to be doing with other characters in this universe, as they announced a Spider-Woman CG/animated spin-off is happening, along with multiple TV shows that are supposed to happen that are still in development. which again, we're going to talk about in due time, but there is a lot happening with the Miles Morales side of Spider-Man. But we're not just done with our Peters and Miles, as we're getting another Spider-Man. As we know, Sony's developing a live-action Spider-Man Noir series, which in some way is set to be a huge departure from the comics, but in some ways will keep some of the elements that people love about the character. We have no idea what they're going for. We don't even know if it's going to be a period piece. We know it's been in development for a while, so eventually we're going to get to it. Just like how eventually we're going to get to the upcoming Silk series, which was announced over 3 years ago. We now know that they're fully back in swing writing. It's coming to Amazon. They're saying it's going to be true to the comic. The synopsis literally mentions Peter Parker and Spider-Man, so things are clearly happening. We just don't know what the intent is. Is it in some way connected to Sony's big Spider-Verse? Because the rights to these characters are split across so many different streaming things and studios that we don't see how it could be. It's probably not connected to the MCU, but we don't know. So best to just hold out hope and hope that this series is solid so we don't have to ask those questions. Now, next up, we got a lot to talk about in here because there's still a lot more Spider-Man related projects by Sony that are all supposed to, maybe, possibly, we don't know, adjacent to the MCU, as Aunt Amy Pascal would say, so let's cover those one by one. First up, Sinister Six. The project that was announced to be a film prior to the release of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has still not seen the light of day. We know that they've been taking cracks at this for years now, and nobody seems to be able to get it right, or at least up to what Sony believes is a passable standard, which is telling because they put out Morbius. So it remains to be seen if we're ever going to get here, but Sony, they're going to try, and they're going to try hard, and they certainly have, so let's see what happens. And speaking of seeing what happens, director Olivia Wilde years ago tweeted that she was excited to be working on Spider-Woman with Sony and Marvel Studios' Kevin Feige. And then nothing has happened. They've talked about the film happening, they've said it's going to happen, Spider-Woman is allegedly still happening. When? Where? How? Why? Will they? Won't they? We don't know. It seems to be the same story in regards to this character. Is it going to be in the MCU? Is it MCU adjacent? Is it a co-joint production? Because some of the Spider-Woman complexity comes out of the fact that she was kind of handled like characters like Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and the Hulk. I mean, there's still so much going on, but let's hope it happens because I legit like the character and I want to see what they can do. And then there is El Muerto. The film was announced because Bad Bunny was like, I want to be in a superhero film. Sony, can I play El Muerto? They said yes. The film was in development, and then it wasn't. And then he quit the project. And then it's still in development without him. So it might happen. Possibly, maybe. We don't know. But it was going to be El Muerto getting Spider-Man powers from a Spider-Man mask or something. It's El Muerto. He's had like 3 comic appearances, so nobody really knows. Speaking of not really knowing, Sony is still working on Jackpot. They've announced the film twice now, to my recollection. Is it ever going to happen? Maybe, maybe not. Is it going to be the original character, which they leaned into being Mary Jane Watson, and then it wasn't, but now it is going to be Mary Jane Watson as the new Jackpot? Who really knows? I've never really had an affinity for this character, so I honestly don't think this film will happen, but there's a chance Sony does make it, and we'll be here to, well, watch it and see what happens. Next up, it was announced that Donald Glover was returning, and many people hoped it would be as, well, the Prowler, Uncle Aaron Davis. But no, he's returning as the Hypno Hustler. The description says he is a funk master and an expert at playing music and using this to do what he does. Okay, fair enough. We'll see what happens with this one. Speaking of seeing what happens, how about Marvel and Sony's Spawn? I mean, Nightwatch. See, I got his name right because I had to look it up for these pictures. So yeah, according to reports in Sony, Nightwatch is still in development. The best way to explain this is that he is essentially a cash grab Marvel version of Spawn. We'll see if this one ever happens. I mean, there's probably a chance that it happens before the actual Spawn film, so Sony could do something interesting here, but they probably won't. And speaking of probably won't, will they, won't they? Well, Black Cat. Will they, won't they? That's the question. The project has entered development, and they've tried to put Black Cat into multiple projects, but nothing has materialized. The closest we got to it was, of course, her and Silver Sable teaming up in Silver and Black. They built suits, they were auditioning actresses, and then 2 weeks before production, they shut it down, and there's been no update since. We know Marvel Studios has been interested in using the character, but Sony doesn't want to give them Black Cat because they want to use her themselves. Which is the same story with our next character, which of course is Silver Sable. A standalone project was allegedly discussed, possibly had pitches, but nothing has materialized. We know at one point Marvel Studios allegedly wanted to use her along with Nick Fury, but again, Sony wants the character for themselves. Rumors have suggested that she could show up in other projects and then gauge interest and see if people want to see her spin-off, but of course that could be years from now, so it's going to be a while till we find out anything in regards to this character, I feel. A character that's definitely going to get the push is Spider-Gwen. We just don't know when, where, in what universe, or how, or even in what format. It's been rumored they want a TV series, it's been rumored they want a film, it's been rumored she could just appear as part of the bigger multiverse. Spider-Gwen definitely seems to be something that's in the cards for Sony, and they really want it out there. The one thing that we've seen discussed is, of course, casting a brand new actress and or possibly bringing back Emma Stone to play the character in the multiverse and then connecting in some way, shape, or form to the bigger multiverse story and possibly even TASM 3 or the next chapter in the Spider-Verse for Sony. Whatever the case is, I think we'll know in the next couple of years, and Spider-Gwen will definitely happen in some way, shape, or form. And speaking of happening in some way, shape, and or form, Miles Morales will be back, but he is going beyond the animated realm, as Sony confirmed active development on a live-action iteration of Miles Morales' Spider-Man. This was confirmed during the press junkets and post-release junkets in relation to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. The film is rumored to be set in a universe where Peter Parker has either met his demise and or is going to meet his demise. It's not allegedly meant to be set in the MCU, as Sony wants to retain full control of it. So let's just hope for the best and hope that they put their best people on it and not the live-action Spider-Man people on it, because we could be in trouble then. Speaking of trouble, it could be a huge sign of trouble and a disaster for Sony if they screw up the next rumored project, which is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4. Or maybe not Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4 and just Spider-Man 4. As it's rumored that Sony is openly in discussions in regards to bringing back that universe and more Toby Maguire's Spider-Man, but they don't know how. And if they can't get Sam Raimi because he's occupied doing other things, they will just proceed and make a new Spider-Man. This would be a film picking up after the events of Spider-Man No Way Home, and of course dealing with Peter as he's older and where his life is at now. Some rumors have suggested this could in a way connect to the bigger multiverse. There's rumors that Madam Web is directly going to reference the events of this film to try to start teasing it and hyping it up for people. If that's the case, I mean, they might have something here. But it's obviously going to take some time to get there, and Spider-Man 4 has been rumored to be off and on again ever since TASM 1 underdelivered. So maybe it's a pipe dream, or maybe it's not, because people thought it would be a pipe dream to bring back Toby and Andrew, but Marvel Studios was able to mend the bridge between Sony and the actors, so I guess we'll see. Now we can finally get back to some concrete dates, and now we are officially entering 2026. Now this is where things get murky from this point on out, because we only got one real release date for anything MCU after this. So this film is dropping on May 1st of 2026. Everything else, we have no idea, including some of the projects I already talked about, like Armor Wars, Ironheart. Those even don't have release dates, but they're, I think, most people believe, coming out before this. So Kang Dynasty may or may not be called Kang Dynasty. We don't really know as of the recording of this. We know that Jonathan Majors was fired, and Marvel Studios found themselves in an interesting position and predicament with the whole Kang scenario. By all accounts, Kang Dynasty is shifting to focus on not just Kang, but also other villains, and sort of be like a Avengers reunite type of film to get us rolling towards Secret Wars. And with a release date in 2026, they obviously got a few years to get there and hopefully deliver the goods. I personally don't think they're going to be able to make it on May 1st, 2026. I think they're going to delay it this year, but we'll talk about this if I do an update video next January and it has in fact happened. Next up, we got Wonder Man. It's been rumored to be in production for quite a long time. It entered production officially, as far as we saw, set photo leaks and everything, this past spring. And then it got shut down, and then it got reworked, and then it was canceled, and then allegedly they uncanceled it, but they told the actors to go look for other work while they try to reshuffle it, and now it might just be a Spotlight limited series, we don't know. There was also the one episode of What If featuring zombies that was so popular that they expanded it into a full animated series. Marvel Zombies is coming at some point. It's still deep in development. It looks interesting, but we don't really know much that we can really talk about, outside of the fact that it looks like Kamala Khan, aka Miss Marvel, is the lead in it. We also have an upcoming Marvel Studios Disney Plus series based on the history of Wakandans going and retrieving stolen vibranium. It's meant to feature all sorts of different flashbacks into what Black Panthers were doing in terms of trying to hide Wakanda, in terms of going out there, sending out the Dora Milaje, and exploring the world through the eyes of Wakandans. This series was recently confirmed to be animated. It was at one point rumored to be live action, but probably due to logistics and costs, they changed direction, which I honestly think is smart. Which also brings me to talk about Black Panther 3. We've heard as of now virtually nothing about a third Black Panther. It would make sense. The second film made a lot of money. Not as much as the first, but still, it was a huge victory, and that world still needs to be explored further. They left some breadcrumbs in relation to where the story could go. There's still a rich world to explore, tons of great characters, tons of potential here for them to really be able to go deeper into this location and also put them up in a war against some other outsiders that might want their technology. Again, they're still the best technologically advanced society on Earth. So chances are they're still going to want to try to get it. Maybe toss in Doctor Doom in there. I mean, the story pretty much writes itself. The last we knew, a Black Panther 3 was scheduled to drop sometime before 2029. So there you go. Take a pick at any date. And speaking of taking a pick at any date, take a pick or take a bet on whether or not Eternals 2 happens. We know that they registered Celestials, End of Times, but that's about it. There's nothing else about the Eternals. There's been literally no mentions. We know that Chloe Zhao will not be back. She said that she was a one and done. There's been no mention of them. The sequel was not formally announced, but of course the trademark is there. And it's rumored, if it is produced, to be a huge departure from the first film to answer a lot of the criticisms that people had in regards to the first film, which I think is probably a smart choice. So we'll see if this film happens. I'm not holding my breath for it, not that I really want it, but hey, it might happen. Speaking of might happen, Black Knight, featuring Kit Harington's Dane Whitman, who has showed up in the Eternals, was supposed to be set up and was supposed to happen according to all reports. There was even a post-credit stinger featuring Blade talking to him in Eternals, and well, nothing's happened. We've heard that the series was at one point canceled, then back in the cards, and then it might be reshuffled into something else, or he might just become a supporting character in something like the Midnight Suns. We don't really know as of right now, but Black Knight is still allegedly set to happen. Speaking of happening, Shang-Chi 2, aka Shang-Chi and the Wreckage of Time, was a trademark that was discovered right ahead of the announcement of everything they made a couple of years ago. It was never announced, but we know that the former director of Avengers, the Kang Dynasty, the same man that directed Shang-Chi, would be directing this film, as it was announced by Marvel Studios to be in development, just no name attached to it. With a title like Wreckage of Time, most people are expecting that this film will release prior to Avengers Secret Wars, and obviously connect to the bigger factors in the multiverse like time being wrecked apart. And since they already played with pocket dimensions and things like that, there are some rumors that we could be seeing other martial arts characters or mystical characters show up in this. One of them being the Iron Fist. Which Iron Fist, we don't really know, but allegedly it's going to happen. Whatever the case is, I love Shang-Chi, I love the character, I love the film, so I'm excited for more. And speaking of more, we are going to be getting more of Shang-Chi, as it was announced when they announced the sequel that they were also working on 2 TV series. Well, one they confirmed, the second one was rumored. The first one will allegedly focus on Shang-Chi's sister and her running the 10 rings. Which, of course, if you remember the ending of Shang-Chi, she was left in charge of it and she was going to reform it in a new image and a new way. Probably do some PR cleanup and try to set them on the straight, but obviously there's still the 10 rings and she's probably going to want to rule with a, well, somewhat harsh, I would assume, leadership, as that's the way she was raised. Whatever the case is, give me more because I'm all in for this one. And they should totally bring back that tournament that we saw her running and incorporate a bunch of the martial arts character in the Marvel Universe in there. It would be a great way for tons of great cameos and appearances. Next up, the human rocket himself, Nova. Nova has apparently almost made it into 2 to 3 different projects, depending on who you ask, but they never want to do it as they want to do it right. We don't know if it's going to be Sam or if it's going to be Richard Rider, who they focus on. Rumors have suggested it could be both. We don't know if it's currently slated to be a TV series or film, as Disney has never stated what they're interested in doing with Nova, but even Kevin Feige has said Nova will happen. So clearly something will happen down the road. Whatever the case is, I hope the character comes at us sooner rather than later, but it remains to be seen as they're moving at a snail's pace on anything NovaCorp. Next up, Vision Quest. So Vision Quest is maybe in limbo, maybe not. We don't know. It's going to be obviously dealing with the fallout of everything that happens in WandaVision, and it's supposed to pick up the story with Vision trying to make/form a family, and this is supposed to bring in his daughter Viv and largely take from the comic. We don't know what the status is, and we know nothing else besides Paul Bettany will return. And now we get to the last known release date. May 7th of 2027 is Avengers Secret Wars. Still expecting both of these Avengers films to be delayed. If they are not, who knows, but Secret Wars is supposed to be the big one. This isn't just the culmination of the Multiverse Saga. This is supposed to be on another level. Marvel Studios has allegedly reached out to anybody and everybody that wants to be in this. Anybody that's previously appeared in anything Marvel is being contacted. They want the entire Marvel universe in this. Rumors suggest we could be seeing animated characters, we could be seeing CGI, like cartoon recreations, old characters from animated series appearing in live action and their animated counterparts, comic books coming to life. I mean, it's pretty much anything you can think of has been rumored for this. The biggest rumors suggest that Sony's characters will also play into this and that it will all connect, and that by the end of this, we're getting one timeline again. It's all going to go to a sacred timeline. Maybe a couple of branches can keep out there so Sony can do their thing. But rumors also suggest that Sony will be playing ball and also be involved with the MCU after. Like, it's going to be a reset for everything. A soft reboot for the entire multiverse. If that's the case, they're going to have a lot of things on their plate. And certainly, I'm interested to see what happens next, what direction they go in, and everything that's going to be happening after Secret Wars, because this has the potential to really revive all the interest that people have lost by giving us the next wave of projects, films, new characters, and so forth, which we're going to talk about after I'm done with this, because this was officially everything we've known has been in development leading up into Secret Wars. Next up, let's talk about some more projects that are in development or have been at some point and still might be, such as Agents of Atlas. So Marvel's Agents of Atlas, the simplest way to explain them is imagine Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but not that structured. Let's put it that way. The notable character here is Randall Park's Jimmy Woo, who's typically on the team, along with Shang-Chi, Hulkling, and countless other characters. The series has a more international feel, featuring a lot more Asian characters, which obviously is important for representation, and we know Marvel Studios would like to do this. So we'll see if it does end up happening. It's a cool concept. I like the comic, so I'm interested in seeing this happen. Rumors have suggested that this could be like a Freak of the Week style thing, where it's Jimmy Woo going around and essentially cataloging and talking to potential members to join his team. If that's the concept, that's pretty cool. And certainly there's plenty of characters in the MCU to do this with, like Strange Academy. He could be finding people to recruit to the Strange Academy, which has been rumored to be developed as a TV series spinning out of Doctor Strange. This, of course, would be about, well, the academy of a bunch of children that are gifted with various powers and magical abilities, and they would be living in this school trying to hone their craft and dealing with some threats in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The best way I would describe this as a perfect pitch would be essentially think of what they've done with Percy Jackson. Just do that in the Marvel Universe. And there you go. You got a winning combo. Just get Wong to be their mentor and you're set. Next up, a standalone Mephisto project. We don't know how far, if at all, they got with this. It's rumored to be taking place after Ironheart and the Agatha series, and it's supposed to be a limited one-time special or a short miniseries. Whatever it is, we'll see if it happens. Next up is Man-Thing. Everybody at Marvel Studios involved with Werewolf by Night said Man-Thing will be back and they want him back. They even built a practical suit there and something that they can move around on set and use it. So clearly they got some intent here. Man-Thing shows up briefly. He's great. He's also a Nexus being. It ties into the bigger multiverse picture. So everything here does check out. My hope would be that they produce something on Disney Plus that's just like a one-shot, 1 hour special for him. Get that out of the way, tell some of his story, and then include him in other projects with multiple other characters. And speaking of getting specials, it's rumored that Adam Warlock might have a special on the way. Something surrounding where he's at, what he's doing to bridge the gap between where he was in The Last Guardians and where he's going to end up with the team. Possibly a solo, standalone side story focusing on him really trying to maybe discover himself and dealing with the fallout of his people, maybe interacting with his sister Aisha. Whatever the case is, I'm interested. I like Will Poulter as an actor. I thought they did great with Adam Warlock, so I definitely want to see more of him. Marvel's A-Force. I don't know if we're ever going to see that. It's allegedly been in development for a while. They've tried multiple passes on it. They just don't know what to do with it, when to place it in terms of release, where, and even why, and how do they naturally come up with the concept. It's a lot easier in comics to just say, hey, all women get together. In the movies, it's a little bit harder, especially because it takes them years of development and sometimes half a decade for some of these characters to meet. So maybe it's a completely different, shrunk-down team, or maybe they got something else in store. Maybe the sequel to the Marvels, if we get one, is A-Force, because they kind of already are leaning in that angle. Whatever the case is, I guess we'll know by the end of this decade if it does happen or not. Because priorities have apparently shifted to Young Avengers. That's the project that Marvel Studios is more eager to get out with the Avengers branding over something like A-Force, Female Avengers, or whatever, right? So this kind of does make sense. You bank on the younger talent and younger characters to grow them to be a little bit more household name and full-on, well, grown-up Avengers. And since most of them are aging out of it, it might just be a one-and-done unless they can prolong it. And who knows what they have in store with some of the other Marvel characters, so I guess we'll see. A Captain Carter project has been rumored to be in development for a while. Haley herself even stated that after Agent Carter, there have been discussions to bring her back more. She just doesn't know where. Of course, we saw that they figured out how to bring Haley back as Captain Carter in multiple episodes in What If, and even as a live-action variant. So clearly, there is interest and intent here. Now, if this happens, obviously, it remains to be seen. But I think it's definitely telling that they keep working with Haley and constantly bring her back and put her at the forefront of What If. So I will not at all be surprised if they announce a standalone Captain Carter project, and even if it's a multiverse project, I think that could be great because then You're not limited by the MCU, and you're free to do whatever you want with her. Which brings me to the Marvels 2, or Captain Marvel 3, or technically Captain Marvel 2, or who knows what the naming scheme would be, because it's confusing. But will this happen? Well, box office of the Marvels dictates no. But who knows what their plans are. Like I said, I think they're just going to shift focus to a all-female team, or just sort of make something completely different. So I don't think we get Captain Marvel 3 or the Marvels 2. I think we're going to get a iterative iteration of all these characters teaming up. And speaking of captains, let's talk about Captain Britain. As far back as 2014, Captain Britain was in active development. Marvel TV even went and scouted locations and were teasing a suit was being made. People connected to the series were working on it, and then it went dead. Nothing. And we've heard nothing since. Allegedly, Marvel Studios got their hands on the character again after Marvel TV lost interest and or were told to stop, and now he's been in active development. Rumors have suggested he could appear first on a team and or possibly then go into his own series or a potential team-up series, which would be sort of like Avengers UK. So let's talk about that for a second. Allegedly, this series would see characters like Captain Britain, Union Jack, and possibly even a version of Agent Carter, and maybe even Psylocke teaming up. This sounds interesting. If it does happen, I would certainly be interested in seeing how this works, but we'll see. This is one of those that I think is a little bit more pie in the sky. First, let's at least get Captain Britain out before we start talking about British Avengers. But we can talk about people that abandon what they stand for and become a nomad, as Nomad is actively in development and the trademarks have not been abandoned from what we can see. Nomad would focus on Captain America. Many people believe it's the multiverse story of Steve going to restore the Infinity Gems, while other people are saying it's going to be completely different and a multiverse tale for Cap. There's also been rumors that this could fill in the gap of what Cap was doing between certain films, but honestly, if that's the case, that series is pointless, because it doesn't matter. It's not going to add a whole lot of context. So ultimately, let's hope, if it is true, let's hope that Nomad is the series most people want it to be, and not just a glorified, hey, here's what I was doing between two films. Watch me jog. Like, who cares? Speaking of who cares, somebody might. I'm still interested. I just want to see what they do. Thor 5 is in development. We know that former director of the last two films, Taika Waititi, is out. Allegedly, this is going to be different. They're going for dark, brutal, less comedy. They want to make a serious Thor film. The film would presumably see Chris Hemsworth's Thor with, well, Love and Thunder teaming up to fight Hercules, who's been sent after Thor after he tried to murder Zeus. I mean, that definitely sounds like it calls for a dark film. Let's just hope that that's the case. Overall, it sounds like that this film is going to take years to get out. It's not a top priority, but they know that there's money in Thor, and everybody seems to agree that there's going to be more. So we'll see what ends up happening with it. Best case scenario, they listen, and we get the best Thor possible. Worst case scenarios, we get something that resembles some of the other films, and maybe it's not an evolution, but just a refinement of what worked previously. No idea if it worked for you, but it worked for me, and that's Namor. We've heard that a project was in development a couple of years ago. People from Marvel Studios did confirm that more or less everything in relation to Namor has been secured, and they're working on the final negotiations, whatever those were. Rumors are that it's still partially tied up with Universal, but that Marvel has regained back pretty much everything in relation to the character, and if they wanted to produce a film, they could, but Namor can't be the solo star of it. That seems to be the going consensus. So it might be Namor and somebody teaming up, and that's the way they bypass it. If that's the case, fine. There's plenty of characters you can toss in here that make sense. So honestly, if we get a Namor film, I'm all in for it. I just hope that they can also explore Atlantis and show us what that's like in the Marvel Universe and how it ties into other things in the MCU. And speaking of other things in the MCU, Ms. Marvel Season 2 seems to be all but confirmed. They've said they want more. Marvel Studios and Disney recently said series that are a little cheaper to produce that can continue past a limited series. Ms. Marvel checks off all of that. There's plenty to do with her character. There's a bigger universe she's connected to. She's right there in Jersey. New York is right there. Kate Bishop is there. There's other characters in New York. It's slowly expanding. This makes sense. Have her start to recruit some of the younger characters and put this out before the Young Avengers project. And honestly, it makes sense. This could even directly lead into it, which would honestly be smart. Building the fan base and carry it on. This all honestly checks out in my opinion. What also works is a follow-up to Moon Knight. Moon Knight Season 2 was rumored to be in development, and Oscar Isaac and even the director, Mohamed Diab, both leaned into them being back in Cairo to do research, and then nothing's happened. Where the story left off, it makes sense that we get a follow-up season. Now, how long it takes, when, what they're going to do, how does Moon Knight return to the MCU? Do they try to ignore the giant cliffhanger and then get back to years from now? Maybe they're crazy enough, or maybe they'll resolve it somewhere else. But it does sound like that they want Moon Knight Season 2, and that the next season could also be radically different. Whatever that means. So, we'll see what happens, but I do hope it's true. I hope we get a follow-up Moon Knight season. And now, the most divisive of the TV series, She-Hulk. It's been rumored that a Season 2 was in development prior to Season 1 airing. Because we saw them shift how they talked about it. It went from talking about She-Hulk as a series to She-Hulk Season 1. Then we saw that all sorts of product related to it were labeling it Season 1. Marvel Studios and the people working on it certainly are leaning into more She-Hulk stories will be told. And from what we found out recently, they've pulled her from a couple of projects because they still want more She-Hulk by herself before she intertwines herself with the rest of the MCU, which honestly I think is kind of smart. So She-Hulk Season 2 could honestly be years away, but it definitely seems like it is something that they want, and it is something that they're going to produce. The series got great accolades in terms of feedback and reviews. The critics loved it, so it makes sense. And since we are talking about Marvel's She-Hulk, we got to talk about Daredevil, because Daredevil Born Again Season 2 was confirmed when they said we're making the first season. And then they said we'll see when we get to Season 2 what the future holds. Obviously, they've talked about it. They're going to make it. Daredevil is on the cheaper side of production. Fan favorite. If Season 1 nails it, we're getting more Daredevil, guaranteed. Rumors have also suggested that this could be a completely different evolution to Daredevil, going a lot more in his comic book route style of growth and just how much happens in his series. And it makes sense. They can do whatever they want. They got CG money, and they're not limited by, well, you know, Marvel TV and how they did things. So they want to toss in couple crazy characters in there, or maybe even powered characters. It sounds like that they can do it, and will, but that's more for after the first season. Next up, the rumored return of Iron Fist and Luke Cage, possibly with a Heroes for Hire series. It's been rumored to be in development. We don't really know if it's gonna happen, but with the rumors that Iron Fist could be appearing in the Black Panther TV series with flashbacks, and then that the character is going to be showing up in possibly the multiverse or one of the pocket dimensions in Shang-Chi 2. I mean, Marvel Studios, they have wanted an Iron Fist project, and Kevin Feige was actively working on a Marvel Studios Iron Fist film before Marvel Entertainment and Marvel TV stole the character from him, so chances are he wants redemption, and since he did it with Black Bolt, maybe Iron Fist and Luke Cage are next, and I hope that they are. Now, the next thing we're talking about is also a lot of hope, and that's the hope of World War Hulk. We're hearing World War Hulk is set to be established in the upcoming Captain America 4, and then after that, we're going to see an all-out Hulk war. Hulk, Red Hulk, She-Hulk, Red She-Hulk, Abomination, Atom Bomb, Hulk's son Scar, all of them are going to be in this allegedly, and it's supposed to be exactly what people want from Hulk. You want an hour and a half of smashy and 25 minutes of story? Well, you're gonna get it here. Just don't complain that the film is lacking story, apparently. But hey, it's a Hulk film. If they want to go back to form and just make a film about Hulk destruction, what better way to do it than a Planet Hulk film? It all makes sense. Literally, send them out to another planet, establish a Hulk hierarchy, have them fight over ownership of it and who's going to rule the planet, add in a little multiverse factor in there, and you're good to go. Literally $1 billion right there from box office. Now, only if there was somebody Hulk could fight for another $1 billion box office. Bam! There's Wolverine coming for Hulk's head. So as rumors have suggested, Deadpool 3 will sort of annex and exile Wolverine, Deadpool, and another handful of Foxman characters into the MCU while their world is pretty much destroyed and or left in limbo for Secret Wars. Wolverine, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, is rumored to come to the MCU and essentially try to discover himself and look for other mutants, and this is going to lead to him discovering a Wolverine of our universe, possibly even a Jimmy Howlett, or maybe even Dakin, his son. We'll see what they do. We know Marvel Studios wants to do it different. And what better way to do it than a standalone Wolverine film, where while he's out there, he runs into a Hulk who's now back on Earth, and the two duke it out. $1 billion easily at the box office, then the two team up and fight whoever. Easily, you can see the appeal of it, and they're going to make a Wolverine standalone project. It makes sense. Even Fox was smart enough to do it. Yeah, Disney and Marvel will do it. Speaking of making easy money, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4 and Legendary Star-Lord. We know that James Gunn said that there were discussions, but he doesn't know what's going to happen in the future. Obviously, he's now running DC Studios, so he's not involved. But he left the team clearly with a brand new composition and set up Guardians 4 at the end of Guardians 3. Also, they openly said they discussed something of a Star-Lord standalone project, more than likely called Legendary Star-Lord, because it ends saying he will return. Naturally, these two projects I think will happen. When though? Well, that's a big question mark that certainly nobody knows. Obviously, I think there is a lot of excitement from people to get to this project, both of them, and to see what the future holds for both. I personally see Guardians 4 happening as a giant galactic, we don't need Star-Lord on the team, and Star-Lord to kind of be him on Earth, integrating himself with some of the newer heroes and then becoming an Avenger. So when we get to the inevitable Guardians and Avengers meet up again, the Guardians are like, hold up, you dumped us for these chumps? Come on, man. You know, there's humor in it and it makes sense. So both of these projects definitely going to happen, I feel. If one doesn't happen, Star-Lord won't happen because they will push for Guardians 4 because it's a $1 billion franchise. Next up, we're finally swinging back around to Spider-Man 4, Spider-Man 5, and 6 all in one. We know that they said if they're getting back to Spider-Man, they want to work out a new trilogy. This was all in the conversation back when rights to Spider-Man were in a frantic limbo between the two and they were fighting over him. They, of course, worked out a new contract. Sony had Marvel bend over backwards to work in Venom cameo to reference their universe. They've clearly worked things out. Rumors are suggesting that the next Spider-Man film will be more street Avengers taking on the Kingpin, but Spider-Man 5 and 6 could swing back to a multiverse factor, take place and have effects in Secret Wars, and that Spider-Man's future in the MCU could even lead to the introduction of Miles Morales for the MCU as well. So we could be getting two Miles. Again, there's a lot to take in here, but I think cooler heads will prevail. Another Spider-Man trilogy guaranteed, multiple Avengers appearances guaranteed, and inevitably they're going to work out something for more appearances. It just makes sense because it benefits Sony. Next up, let's take a pit stop to Deadpool land, where Deadpool 4 is more or less a guarantee. When they acquired Fox, Bob Iger said, Deadpool is a franchise that's not going anywhere. That terminology, you use it when you're telling your investors, hey, we're making an R-rated Deadpool franchise, and it's going to bring in tons of money. It will. Deadpool 3 will bring in tons of money. So Deadpool 4 is more or less a guarantee, and it's probably going to be a full-on MCU film. They can deal with the fallout of everything, including the fallout of the project that I've only slightly talked about so far and its giant effects. This, of course, being Secret Wars. Now, Secret Wars, again, is meant to be an ending, a soft reboot, a restart, a reintroduction, a new wave of characters. A new sort of saga is supposed to begin after Secret Wars. So Secret Wars is going to bookend everything, and it's going to allegedly lead into what is called the Mutant Saga. Now, this is where things get crazy with Marvel Studios. By all accounts, not only is the standalone Wolverine movie happening and Deadpool 4, X-Men are about to be, for lack of a better term, exploited. Everybody with a brain knows we're gonna get an X-Men trilogy. That is so crystal clear. It's honestly ridiculous that some people believe that we're gonna get like a one and done or an X-Men TV series only. X-Men is a billion-dollar franchise, and it's gonna carry the MCU for at least a decade. So it's not surprising that we're hearing that X-Men 1, 2, and 3 will be happening in a rather faster succession. They don't want like 4 or 5 year waits. More than likely, 2.5, 3 years between films, get them out. But also, there's going to be projects set in the X-Men universe focusing on various different teams. Whether it's X-Force, whether it's Excalibur, or whatever they're going to toss in there, New Mutants, they want it all. And by all accounts, we can expect multiple X-Men based projects to be hitting us after Secret Wars. And that's really the next big push and crux of everything that they're going for. Now, of course, I should also mention that these projects will, of course, be joined by the likes of more Fantastic Four sequels. That makes sense. More Doctor Strange, the previously mentioned Spider-Man films. They're obviously going to be falling into a new schedule. With new TV series, which we've covered so many of them that are potentially in development in this video. And that's what we're here to talk about. So trademarks have been discovered for a couple of things. First and foremost, there is some leftover trademarks I quickly want to touch upon. The one that I'm super interested in, and it might have been canceled or reshuffled, we don't currently know, but that's Runaways New Era. The Runaways was a series that lasted 3 seasons on Hulu as part of Marvel TV. I loved it, one of my favorite Marvel TV series. Rumors are that they want to reboot it, as this was another passion project of Kevin's that was stolen by Marvel TV. And it's rumored to connect to the bigger Marvel universe, which obviously brings us to talk about a couple of these new trademarks that I hinted at. So the registered trademarks we saw was Marvel's Eternity Saga and Marvel's Timeless Saga. Now, the other trademark and rumor that's been out there is that they're making Avengers Eternity Wars, and that's coming way after Avengers Secret Wars. But another rumor is Avengers Forever, which would essentially be a sort of reunion film of the previous Avengers that have, well, died or been lost or whatever, or displaced in time, whatever the case is. Now, all of these sound like they're plausible, like they might happen, but we don't exactly know what the status is. And as I just talked about it, Marvel has a lot to build up to. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of villains and characters coming in. At earliest, if you were to see Avengers Forever, right now, since I think delays are coming, you're probably not getting that film till minimum 2030. So you're talking 6 years away minimum. And if we're going to get to something like Eternity Wars, that's probably after Avengers Forever. And you still got to take the factor that the Eternity Saga has to happen. So if that remains as a trademark, same with the Timeless Saga, does that mean that the Mutant Saga is only one phase? So is Phase 7 all just mutants everywhere after Secret Wars? And then, okay, Phase 8, we get into Eternity 9 Timeless? Like, that's going to be rapid too. Like, it's going to be more rapid than what we just got that people complained about. So time will tell what's going to happen. I'm excited nonetheless. It's why I just spent over an hour going over every project, as I do every other year, or maybe every year, depending on how much news there is and what we hear. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the length of this video. Hopefully you listened to it. And hopefully now you can go to bed without me haunting you in your dreams after you heard me talk for an hour straight. So thank you for listening. Thank you for another year of support, and we'll see you guys next time.